we are on to the question and answer portion of our session, where we're going to take a look at some of the questions that have been given to us and see if we can provide some additional guidance. The first question: what do you recommend as the most important thing a business owner should check on a regular basis, and why? And I think that this is probably one of the themes that Michelle and the other presenters have touched on as well. I think it's important as a business owner that you know your finances and the people that you are doing business with very well, and you check that on a consistent basis. And another thing is that you have the appropriate controls and checks and balances in terms of those who have the ability to write checks and, pay bills, pay payroll, and things like that. Certainly, if you've been reading a lot of articles in the Business Journal or the Star newspaper lately, there are a lot of businesses where the employees have embezzled because the appropriate financial controls weren't put in place, and the business owners are left out in the cold for the most part, and the employees are going to jail. So I think know everybody that you are doing business with and make sure that you understand your finances. Second question: you said businesses can revise some agreements in a bankruptcy. When is it too late for me to try to revise the agreement on my own? Well, when it becomes too late for you to revise an agreement on your own outside of bankruptcy is once the agreement has expired. And so once the agreement has expired, you don't have a lot of leverage to be able to do much of anything. And so it's important, as you are negotiating the agreement, that you understand all of its terms, including the expiration date, how much notice you need to give if you want to extend the agreement, and things like that. Inside of a bankruptcy gives you leverage to negotiate certain types of agreements that you don't have outside of bankruptcy. And at a high level, there are two types of agreements: leases and executory contracts, which is a bankruptcy term where it means that there are obligations on both sides, both the company and the other party to the contract have obligations. So you do have the ability to revise those agreements in bankruptcy, but only if the agreement is still in place at the time of the bankruptcy filing. So certainly don't wait until the day after the agreement has expired to try to do something, because it will be very difficult, if not impossible, outside or inside of a bankruptcy. Next question: how often does a business bankruptcy cause a small business owner to need to file a personal bankruptcy as well, and how can it be avoided? The main time that we see would be if the business is the borrower on, a line of credit or a loan with a bank. And it's very typical, in fact, it's unusual if the business owner is not required to personally guarantee that debt. So if the primary loan does not get resolved in the bankruptcy, there could be a situation where the individual business owner might have to file for bankruptcy as well if they're not able to resolve issues with the bank, to come up with a plan to pay the bank if the business isn't able to. There might also be times when the business owner would have to file if there are tax obligations where the company didn't pay those taxes, but there are certain types of taxes. If the business doesn't pay them, the owner or responsible party in the business may be responsible for paying those taxes. So a bankruptcy for the individual might be an option there. However, and again, this is at a very high level, some of those taxes can be dealt with in a bankruptcy and some of them cannot be. So that is when you'd need additional legal advice. But those are probably the two primary reasons when the owner would need to file individually. At what point should a small business owner contact an attorney to maybe help them avoid bankruptcy, or should they seek an accountant for cash flow issues that may eventually lead to bankruptcy? Well, of course, my answer is always contact us sooner rather than later, but Michelle and I have joked over the years. Actually, I shouldn't say joke. We have smiled over the years that the bankruptcy attorney is always the last one to be called, which is understandable because a lot of times you don't want to admit that your business is in trouble. So obviously the earlier the better, because sometimes if you have a long runway, that gives us a better opportunity to try to negotiate resolution with landlords, with banks, with vendors, and things like that. Certainly, the closer you get to D-Day, the tougher it is to negotiate, but it's certainly not impossible. The one time when it is, I guess I should say it's never too late to contact an attorney. It's the question of what will your attorney be able to do for you. And it is difficult for the attorney to assist you with a plan if you come in when leases have expired, contracts have expired, you're in default under your loans, and the maturity date has passed and the debt's been accelerated. And so just try to be mindful of those deadlines. And most good attorneys will give you the first hour free. So never hesitate to reach out just to see what you can do in terms of options, and then the choice is always yours. I think we answered that question. Let's see, what is the most common mistake small business owners make that can send them into bankruptcy, and what would be the best way to avoid it? I think the main thing is just keeping your head in the sand that there are issues. I was told as a young attorney when I was first starting out that, my mentor said to me, look, you may think that you've screwed up, but as soon as you think that, come in and talk to me, because most of the time we can always figure it out. And I think that that's the thing here, is that once you take your head out of the sand, acknowledge that you may have some issues, talking with someone who has a little bit more perspective than you do at this point could be helpful, and that would, that perspective maybe will allow you to make, decisions instead of, decisions based on information and facts instead of emotions. And the final question, what is the one problem you wish people would ask you about before it's too late? Well, I think this really wraps up everything that we've talked about, that don't wait until the last minute, because there are certain options that won't be available to you if your agreements are no longer in effect. And so don't be scared or don't hesitate to reach out.